All right, we are live. You should be able to see it on my page here. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the live stream with Bow Wow Bill. I have the one and only Kelly Engel from Know Thy Dog, training in Bozeman, Montana. How you doing, Kelly?
I'm good, thanks.
Let me share this. Per usual, give us a second to share this, and if you don't mind sharing it as well, let's get this out far and wide. I'm going to share it on my personal page, and I'm going to share it on my or on the Dogs Chatting page.
So I just hit share now, correct?
Yep, share now, and it should go on your page, and we are good to go, I think. There. So you are in Montana.
Yep, I'm in Bozeman.
And as you can tell by her outfit,
it's 4 degrees is the high today, and I'm training outside all day.
And she's got her hot chocolate and everything. I was telling her she looks like Swiss Miss or something there.
Yeah, I'm in the cabin, the whole thing, the whole cliche.
So what do you do there? And so it's Know Thy Dog, right?
Correct. Yep, it's a play on Know Thyself.
Okay.
I own a dog training, boarding, and daycare facility. And we do, board and train and private lessons and all the normal programs, boarding and daycare.
Well, and I know that, Montana is, pretty rural.
It is. And so when I moved here from Seattle 5 years ago to open the business, I researched 3 places that interested me to live, here, Bend, Oregon, and Fort Collins, Colorado. And this area looked prime to me. There weren't really any trainers that were my style. There was only a couple boarding facilities, and there's about 100,000 people in Gallatin County. And so I just took a risk and came out here and opened a little training business that turned into this. So.
And you started in Seattle, right?
I've been training forever. I was a competitive dog show kid. So okay. I showed Shelties growing up for other breeders in Washington State, and I did AKC junior handling, and I was really into dog showing conformation. And then I did 4-H, and then I trained professionally in Seattle area. When I turned 18 for a while, I was just too young. I wasn't mature enough. But I bred and showed miniature Australian Shepherds until I was about 23, and then did agility and every, fly ball. I've done everything. And then took a little departure, took a breather. So.
When you say you weren't mature enough, what does that mean? Like you physically weren't mature, or?
Yeah, when I was 18, I was teaching clicker classes I went to the chicken clicking camp. Marion Breland, Bailey, and Bob Bailey, they were B.F. Skinner's students, and they used to teach a chicken clicking camp. And I went to it when I was 18 and became a devout clicker trainer, and taught classes with this woman I was mentored from when I was really young by a woman from France who was early into ring sports with Rottweilers. And she and I taught a class together, and then I got involved with her, and I just emotionally trying to host a class, and everyone's clicking, and I couldn't handle the people managing it, the whole thing. So I just did my own thing. But I've lived in a pack of dogs since I was 18. When I was 18, I had about 4 or 5 dogs, and I've never had less than that. So.
Well, how many do you have now?
11.
Personal dogs, right?
Yeah.
That's funny.
And then I've got client dogs that are always staying here outside of my facility. So I actually have 14 dogs in my house right now. So.
Yeah. So if we hear any strange noises, we'll forgive them. And I have a bunch of dogs here. It just kind of goes with the territory.
Exactly.
And you were actually the person that inspired me to get my little devils too.
Yep, I'm sorry.
I met Kelly's dogs. I had a seminar at my property with Nelson Hodges, and she brought over the mini cattle dogs, and I was hooked from that day forward, and so much fun.
Yeah, they are. They're. I love they're great. So,
How much,
and I also have an umbrella cockatoo right behind me here that's mimicking, like laughing. So if you hear that, it's the parrot. So sorry.
it's all good, man. So
Yeah,
yeah, birds, dogs. Yeah, let's
horses.
get back to it. So you started, and horses too, you said?
Yeah,
And horses.
yeah. We have 11. Yeah, it's the bird. We have 11 dogs and an umbrella cockatoo and 2 horses and a bunch of homing pigeons and a falcon. So
My goodness.
yeah.
So you're starting to get you're out in the how many acres are around you, like when you step outside your door?
So I own 5, but I'm in the middle of private land that has no houses. So it's literally like I can't see a house for there's 2 miles between myself and the next home. And there's about 50,000 plus acres out here that's just untouched. It's beautiful for, cows. And there's a herd of about 1,000 sheep that circle my property every once in a great while. So,
Cool.
yeah.
So, you weren't mature enough at 18, and then you
Mm-hmm.
started working. You got back into showing dogs. Is that what happened, or
So I showed dogs, was doing agility. I was doing everything until I was about
volleyball?
23. And then we had 14 Australian Shepherds. And then when I was 23, I just burned out. I'd been doing it, since I was a kid. And so I took about a 7-year professional hiatus and I got into real estate. But while I was doing that, I still owned, 6 or 7 dogs that whole time. And when I was 27, I had an opportunity to go to Hurricane Katrina and volunteer doing dog rescue there. And it was crazy. I lived a very sheltered life. And then I go right after, I think I got there at the beginning of September. And I ended up spending, off and on over a year there. But I went there and was immediately brought in, like the third day I was there, to New Orleans. And I was stuck there. I was snuck in a van, dropped off in a parking lot with some pretty, I don't know, you'd call them a wild gang of animal rescuers. And I ended up running that entire rescue group with a couple of friends now. So I was there living in a parking lot for 3 months, and through the process ended up becoming an aggressive dog handler for my group there, my nonprofit, my little rescue group. And then I went on and helped the HSUS handle a bunch of dogs from Katrina that were taken to something called Edna, and it was like a fake, ended up being an animal hoarding situation in Arkansas, and they had about 500 dogs on site after Katrina, and a bunch of them had died because they had just been dropped off there and the people running it had disappeared. So I ended up going there for HSUS and handling some, probably the most dangerous dogs I've ever been around in my entire life was in that area. And I was mauled by a Rottweiler there. Probably one of the only bites I've ever taken. I was mauled by a Rottweiler. So anyway, so that I had this chunk of time when I was working in real estate where I went down there, and then once I got back, I couldn't get my mind off of it. It's just it's your gift, your whatever. And so
Something calling to you from an intrinsic desire,
yeah.
whatever, something.
Yep. So about that was when I was 27, 28. When I was 30, I left real estate and got back into I went and did animal control. I was an officer and worked for animal control in Portland, Oregon. And that ultimately led me back to work for my dear friend, Denise Stringfellow up in your area, Denise, over at River Dog. And I had just been I'd been out of the game for a while. I didn't, I only knew my own. I just needed to brush up. What were we doing these days? Where dog training gone, and so I got brushed up there, and then I just had a lot of my own ideas and just came here and opened my business. So that's my evolution. So
And you studied it too. You studied the area. You said that you were looking at Bend and Fort Worth. Did you say?
Fort Collins, Colorado.
Fort Collins. Okay, so West Coast.
Yeah.
Yep. And so you moved there, and do you have anybody in Montana there, or do you?
No. I remember Denise looking at me. She's like, you've gone crazy. You're moving to rural Montana. You don't know a single person, and you're opening a business. And I was like, that's exactly what I'm doing. So I didn't have a penny in my pocket when I got here. Not a penny. I was my dad even actually had to pay my first 2 months of rent so I could live out here. And then the business took off right away. So.
And I mean, took off. So you do a different type of training, and was it just you? Was it? I mean, and was it know thy dog from the beginning? What did it look like when boots hit the ground in Montana?
Yeah, so it was know thy dog from the beginning, and when I moved out here, my ambition was just to be a dog trainer by myself, and do board and train and private lessons like in my home.
Okay.
And what happened is this crazy sequence of events where I rented this amazing place on the river to start my business from this great woman who was a big supporter of mine. So for the first year, I'm training dogs on this Shangri-La riverfront property. And then I ran it a little part of my business out of someone else's doggy daycare just so I could meet people. And a year into it, the house I was running sold, and I got into a bind where I suddenly didn't have anywhere to run my business. And so all these weird little things happened where I had a client who kind of stepped in and helped me, started, suggesting I look for buying a facility. And, so I had an opportunity arose where I could buy a facility, but that also meant that to afford it, I had to offer boarding and daycare. So, and it's a big facility. It's, 6,000 square feet. It can hold up to 70 dogs or so. And it's, but I went from, having like my overhead per month was so low to just going, oh my gosh, I can't believe I'm going to do this. And I remember coming to Seattle to visit my mom, and I was just
Stressed.
so scared about this jump, and would I be successful, and did my numbers pencil out? And it was the most stressful time of my life, I think, but it all came together.
How long ago was that?
3.5 years ago.
Oh wow! So still very recently, and you've done very well in that time, haven't you?
Yeah, I don't know if I got lucky or what, but I came into the perfect time, the perfect location. So now
Well,
I think I have 9 or 10 full-time employees now.
Okay.
And I just hired a personal assistant to kind of help me get my life organized, because I've been working about 12 hours a day, just running wild. I'm sure you know how it is. So.
Well, I don't think it's just luck. I think that you have a unique perspective because of the situations that you have been in, not just with the hurricane and witnessing that hoarding situation and being mauled and having some pretty, high maintenance dogs there. But before that, with the Shelties and when you were showing and you had kind of a formal understanding of the dog world, and then you have, as you were an animal control officer in Portland, what did you glean from that experience that you bring with you today?
From animal control or Katrina or all the above?
I would say just the animal control aspect.
Yeah.
I think that's an interesting one because you get to see behind the veil, and you're the one that is kind of that the liaison between the public and the problem, so to speak, right? And so, what was that like?
One of the things, well, there's a few things you get out of animal control. You become an excellent dog handler,
right?
Because you don't have a choice. I became the Chihuahua whisperer. So everyone that had a bitey Chihuahua, I'd come in and, it's my bird. I would come in and anyway, but what I got out of animal control and working in a shelter environment is a lot of people that work in the shelter, become really bitter about people surrendering their dogs and their excuses. And, I was always happy to get a dog from somebody. I know, I was like, now it's safe. Now it's in good hands. I'm glad that they brought it here. And I just never felt that bitterness. I was just, I don't know. And then the other thing as an officer is I was always giving out dog food to homeless people. I was always like, I don't know.
Yeah.
That was, but doing that work, it's just, you know, the average, I hate to say it, but, you know, I have this great perspective from my clients. My clients are always worried that they're not doing enough for their dog doesn't have a good life. If they've got 2 dogs and they have to rotate them because they don't get along for some reason, you know, they're always worried about it. And I'm like, you know, from what I've seen, you know, the average dog sits in a backyard for 12 hours a day, and that's its life. So if you're doing something better than having your dog sit out in the backyard for 12 hours a day, and you're making these efforts, and it's, you know, you're engaging the dog, like if that's the best you can do, it's not that bad.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was at Katrina too. I mean, I couldn't believe the resilience of those Katrina dogs. I mean, they were just destroyed, and they were so resilient. So
Yeah, you were there for 3 months at Katrina in a parking lot.
mm-hmm. And then I lived off and on for the next year at the Louisiana Humane Society. It was in Tylertown, Mississippi. So we still, I kind of did did a lot of behavior work for them, just volunteer. So I'd go stay for 3 weeks at a time, and we'd figure out, you know, play groups and stuff like that. And after Katrina, one of the challenges we had is that all of these aggressive dogs that we couldn't send off to a shelter, we had to house them somewhere. And a lot of them ended up at the Louisiana Humane Society. And we couldn't, you know, you couldn't put them to sleep or place them for a while because you had to wait for an owner hold. So for a long time, and then you got attached to them. So we had all these dogs that you couldn't have near another dog, and they're, you know, some of them are pretty shady with people too, but we'd all become attached to them and their history and the story. And so, anyway, so I have great connections and friendships with the people, with that crew down in the South still. So.
I bet. I mean, it you know, nothing ties you together like tragedy, and I mean, just I couldn't even imagine. I had some of the dogs that from Katrina come up here.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and they were in rough shape, man. I mean, some of those dogs that were swimming in that water and
covered in sores.
yeah, just covered in sores and hairless, and just we didn't really know how to treat them. Yeah, it's interesting, and then also the puppy mill situation. I think that people just kind of get over their heads, and they want to help, and they get into it with their heart, but the head, you really need to think this stuff out, you know, logistically, and you know, as well as the emotional toll it takes. You know,
exactly. Yeah.
And so now you're in Montana, and you have your own style of training, and you call it pack therapy. Could you explain what that is, and how you came about with that style, and
yeah,
why you use it?
Go ahead. And what? Oh.
And why you adhere to it? Why you use it?
Yep. I've evolved to this, so this has been quite an evolution. You know, I used to do the standard training, the 12, you know, the 2-week board and train, sit down, stay, all that stuff. And I've lived in a pack of dogs since I was 18. So for about 22 years, I've lived in a pack of dogs at the, you know, 4 to 5 at the least, up to about 15 to 16. And I started had a lot of clients out here that are limited in their freedom, and this is everywhere, but out here everyone's into outdoors, and they have, you know, dogs that are, you know, they just can't take the dog out, and the typical everything out here is off leash. You know, everybody's cross country skiing off leash, hiking off leash, there's off leash dogs everywhere.
Right.
And so a couple years ago, I've always had an interest in troubled dogs. And, you know, I've spent time with Nelson and a few people who kind of put some new ideas in my head, and I've experimented with things. But then I started bringing really challenging dogs into my own pack and living with them 24/7 and watching, you know, just where they would, you know, what mistakes I was making and how the dogs all, you know, would interact. And I'll tell you, nothing gives you an education like living in a pack of dogs and incorporating troubled dogs into it. That's been my biggest education right there. So I started doing that about 2 or 3 years ago, and so it's really nice now because I can. What's ended up happening, and I don't even advertise this. It's not on my website. It's just through word of mouth. And I'm getting clients from all over the country that want to have their dogs come in and do, I call it pack therapy. So the dogs come and live in my home and they're just with a pack of dogs 24/7. And, I'm here to give feedback to the dogs and support the process. And my dogs, all of them except one, I would say are pretty balanced dogs. So, that's the program I do. And it's very different than what we're doing at my facility. My facility does, doodles and
like daycare stuff, right?
Yeah. And I've got 2 trainers there that are Max and fantastic trainers. So I'm blessed to have them to do that work. But I don't even like talk about obedience anymore. I don't really care for that word. I'm really particular about language. It's one of the most nitpicky places you'll find with me and dog behavior is language.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's what I do. So I have, human or dog aggressive dogs just staying at my home and 2 to 3 weeks at a time. So I've got 3 here right now. So.
Well, I mean, what do you call it? What do you refer to besides obedience? What do you prefer?
I like connection. I like to talk about advocacy. Obedience. I don't like anything that suggests that dogs aren't so I know there's a trend. I do my own thing out here. I'm in my own little bubble, but I'm aware of what's kind of a trending vocabulary or trending ideas right now. And I know there's a big trend towards, and I don't know, trend is like a downplay. I don't want to downplay it because I really value and honor it, but I love this whole, like, the consider the dog or the dog side or, stuff that Tyler and Gary and all those guys, I love honoring the dog.
Yeah.
And so in obedience, I feel like that there's this idea that we force the dog to behave a certain way. And that's just my own issue. But I feel like when we use language with clients, like I don't use the language. I don't say alpha. I don't talk about dominance or submission. I don't even say pack leader. I don't like any of that language because I watch my clients use these words and then describe the actions and the way that they want to act when they use these words. So the words have like an energy.
Yeah.
So,
well, in a role that they need to step into.
Exactly. And so I'll ask my clients when they're like, I need to be the alpha, or this trainer told me I need to be the alpha. And I said, well,
Alpha.
what do you do? What do you do when you're the alpha at home? And well, I go out the door first and I eat first. And, I do these things, I'm the alpha, and I'm like, yeah, okay, whatever. So I talk about value. That's my word. I like the word value. Like, why does this dog want to work with me?
Right.
Why does this dog care about me right now? Why does this dog care more about me than it does about the trigger out in the environment? That stuff's way more interesting to me. I don't like cliche anything. I like to think, I'm kind of woo-woo. I like to think about it that way. So we don't say obedience. I don't say pack leader. I'd say advocate. I talk a lot about that bird is a pill. I really like. So the other thing is when I'm talking to my clients who have troubled dogs, I like
or troubled birds.
She has to chime in here. I like to. I want to give them a way to connect with their dog that's visceral. So I don't use any scientific terms at all. I don't care about that. I want them to feel in their body and experience that they can connect to how their dog feels at that moment. Because a lot of the work we do, as you know, is when you're helping a dog feel better and get more balanced, a lot of it is you don't get your emotional needs met anymore. And
right.
It's really confusing to fulfill the dog's emotional needs, but in a way that doesn't match up with all the nurturing stuff that we do. Because it's so one of the things I love to talk about is if you were in a restaurant or a bar with your girlfriends and your drinking buddies. So I use the phrase, like, if you're with your drinking buddies and you're having a great time, and somebody walks in the restaurant and they're waving a gun and everyone is screaming all of a sudden, and you're not gonna, your girlfriends are screaming, like your drinking buddies, everyone's falling apart, right? So of course you don't feel safe at that moment. But over
Right.
here, suddenly there's a police officer or a Marine or somebody that's going to take over the situation. And they stand up and they say to you, and they look at you and they go, lay down, don't move till I tell you to, don't, nothing, don't breathe. And that moment where they have that clarity and that directness and they tell you exactly what to do, this sense of safety, because they've taken over that space, comes over you in that moment. And they didn't hug you. They didn't give you treats. They didn't, nothing. They took over the situation with an energy and a confidence and a directness that brought you safety. And so when I'm working with troubled dog clients, I talk about that. I can say, you have to be your dog's, police officer / advocate and not their drinking buddy, because that's how you make them, trust you and feel safe. And it's not how you think it's going to be. It's not, you know how it is. You have a client, I do evaluations every day, and the dog comes in, the worried dog, and it sits next to the client and it's climbing up their leg and, usually whining, and they're touching it the entire time. And they're going, you're okay, you're okay, you're okay, you're okay. And then I asked them can you move the dog over to a bed, just as my own entertainment, but that's not, but I want to see what happens here. I said, why don't you move the dog away from you and onto a bed while we talk? So, they can relax. And of course, that's not what happens. They go try to move the dog on the bed and the dog's screaming and they're having, they can't listen to me because they're so upset about the dog not being next to them and how the dog feels. And so it's, kind of back to the name of my business, Know Thy Dog. I spend so much time, vetting my clients and trying to figure out what's happening in that relationship between them and the dog and talking about it. The dog is a mirror. Even if you adopted the dog from the shelter yesterday, you wouldn't met that dog, and something in your heart and then your energy connected to that dog's energy, and then poof, it has these issues. So anyway, it's my soapbox about that. But
well, it's also the dog is responding according to their environment, and we'll see the same problem over and over, in that dog, and when a particular person, and so we have to look at that, and I also tell people that these dogs can teach us way more about us than we can teach them because they're responding to their environment. It's just it's especially if you have a very very high maintenance case where you have a dangerous dog. It's not easy, and you have to keep your wits about you, and you have to, know that the wants and needs, the desires of that particular animal, and that takes connection, but there's something that connects us to these dogs, man. I've felt it myself, and sometimes the butthead dogs, they just haven't been understood. And once you start understanding them, and they get that you get it, and they're like, oh, finally, dude, finally somebody gets what I'm saying. And then you're like, I got it, dude, knock it off. And they're like, oh, okay, my bad, and then that's how it happens. But you have to, there's a process, and we are different species as human beings. And so I see the value of what you do with the pack therapy, taking it to that next level and letting the dogs be the feedback loop with that, right? And if anybody that's listening has any questions, feel free to type them in the comments below, and we can ask live. The other thing that you do that you've really gotten into in the last few years is hunting, and there's some I like it. I like strong women, that have, that are resourceful, and I like that you do that. But you hunt. Tell me about your hunting and what got you into hunting and how you hunt.
I've actually only been into hunting this last year, and I've had an interest in it for a long time because the partnership with the dog really interested me. And I finally had an opportunity with my partner right now, to get more savvy with it. And so we upland bird hunt. I went elk hunting for the first time this year, but that doesn't involve the dog. So I can bow hunt. I, in theory, could bow hunt. I have a bow, but we upland bird hunt, and then my partner is a falconer. So, we use the dogs to, with the falcon, to hunt as well. Not my dogs, because I think my dog would kill the falcon, unfortunately. So, I hunt with Dutch Trottars, and my partner has two English setters, and you couldn't have two more opposite hunting dogs. They both point, but you couldn't have two more opposite hunting dogs personality wise than our dogs. So it's kind of amusing. But yeah.
And then,
Mhm.
and I was going to say, why did you choose those dogs?
So I have you ever met a Drottar? Have
I
you
have not. I have not.
Yeah.
I think they're good looking dogs. I'm going to post up the picture of the that you sent me earlier.
Okay.
Here we go. Let's see if I can figure this technology out. All right, and it should pop up here, and I don't know if you can see it.
Let's see
I
here.
will put it up here on the screen here. So there it is.
Oh yeah.
And so, can you see it on the screen?
Yeah, it's tiny on my screen, and my computer is kind of gone off.
I'm
So
gonna I'm
I
gonna
can
pop
see it.
down. I'm gonna pop down and see if I can make it bigger for you, and then you just describe what we're looking at here, okay?
Sure. Okay, am I supposed to describe? I don't know. Anyway, there's a picture here. It's of Jeff and his falcon, and then there's a picture of the falcon taking off with one of Jeff's setters, and then there's a photo of two of my Drothars. We were out hunting, and there's the setter off with the falcon, and they're heading out to go hunt, and then yeah, that's Jeff's bird right there. So we have that falcon, and then that's Jeff's falcon. And then the last picture is those are my drots. And so I have Indy. He went out and actually found an antelope shed instead of finding birds, which was still okay. And then Folks is my puppy. She's 6 months right there, so she's in training right now. So I don't know if you're gonna come back on here. I don't see you. Oh, you are. Okay.
Back.
Yeah. So my opinion, so the reason I'm drawn to this breed is they're kind of like the Malinois of gun dogs.
No way.
Oh my gosh, they are absolutely insane. Insane. I mean, I have never had a dog as fun as he's an intact Malese too, and I bought him at a German hunting field test or try. It wasn't a trial, it was like an instinct test, and I went to watch him at this test, and I was scared of him. I was like, that's so much dog. They told me he couldn't be with cats and chickens, and I have all that running around here. And anyway, this weird succession of events, I ended up buying him and buying a puppy on the same day, and then going, oh God, what have I done? And but oh my gosh, I mean, he will legitimately eat my cat, and he's eaten a few chickens, but he is, oh my gosh, he's insane. Like yesterday, it's 4 degrees here, and we have the Yellowstone River out here, and it's huge. It's dangerous. And I took him out just to go potty, and he goes and flushes ducks and crosses the river in 4 degrees, and I'm just like, he's dead. I thought he was dead. Sure, he was dead. Any other dog would have died. And he just goes over there and comes back and floating down the river. And I was like, oh my gosh. But he's so amazing, and he's so connected. He's and I love nothing more than getting a bird in his mouth. I love hunting him. And so he's what we call a versatile hunting dog. So you've got, these like setters, they're very much just a bird dog for pointing.
Right.
And
setting was for nets before they had gunpowder. Setting refers to the dog would point at the bird, and then when the person would come by to throw the net, the dog would set or drop down.
Oh, cool! I didn't know that.
Yeah, to allow the net to capture the bird.
Yeah. Okay, that's cool. I had no idea. Yeah, I mean, and Jeff's dogs are amazing. Like they go out, 400 yards. Like they cover so much ground. And mine don't range like that. Mine only range up to about 200 yards. But anyway, so so I've had to do a lot of training this year with my bird dogs, and I had an opportunity to go down to Nevada and work with a kind of a gun dog whisperer down there, and I learned so much from him. Just kind of blew my mind, and so I've been using a lot of his techniques with the dog, the puppy that I'm raising, and then the 2-year-old dog I have. A friend of mine did some training with him before I got him and did a great job, but he hadn't had a lot of bird work. So anyway, but they retrieve foxes, they blood trail, they do
Really?
everything. They're a really neat dog. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
why he got that shed.
Yeah, exactly.
He
Yeah. I
just
mean,
went
that's what's
fast.
fun about him. He just,
You're like, wow, we got a shed.
yeah, the first time I took him out, he treated a bobcat. I was like, what the hell? He's crazy. So he hot tubs with me every time I go in the hot tub. There's a photo on my Facebook or Instagram of us hot tubbing together.
Let me see if I can find that one, man.
Yeah, he loves the hot tub with me. They're just such a fun dog.
How old was he when you got him? When you bought him?
My battery's getting low. There we go. He was about 20 months. So I've only had him for like 6-7 months now, I think. So
yeah, I found a hot tub picture. Hold on. I gotta throw it up here. It's gonna be little, but there it is.
Oh yeah, there's us in the hot tub.
Yep.
Yeah.
Your hot tub buddy out on the sticks.
Exactly. So yeah, we mostly just go bird hunting. The season's over now, and we closed it out. We went to Idaho at the end of January and got a couple quail, and that was it. But
what has the experience been like for you? What do you notice when the dogs? Do you notice when they go into like hunting mode?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, when you get on a dirt road. So what's really interesting is this. I don't know if you've heard of energy management as a phrase. I hadn't really ever talked about it before, but energy management's interesting because here's this dog that's got to go out and work, and if before it's going out to actually work, it's in a complete frenzy, barking, going crazy. It's burning all of this energy it's going to need to go out and do its job. And so I love my dogs is they are dead quiet all the way out, and the second they get out of the car, they're on.
Wow.
And Jeff, his setters, one of them's like that, but the other one is, she's crazy. Like she'll poop. She doesn't do it anymore, but she would poop in her crate because she was so intense to go work when we hit a dirt road, and that's gotten better for her. But they go out, and I mean, it's just to watch it. I mean, it's so amazing. It is.
Yeah. What do you speak on that? What do you find amazing about it? And because I feel the same way. I mean, you can't. That's what people don't realize, especially people that sometimes contact me for service dogs. They want me to turn their dog into a service dog, or same thing with hunting or something. But when the dog doesn't have the characteristics, you can't really put it in them, right?
Yeah.
But they do. I mean, it's amazing to watch, right?
Yeah. Oh, it is. And I don't. We don't do any force fetch, and we don't do any woe training.
Okay.
We do. It's just very different. The way that we've started the puppy and the way that we've worked the dogs. So, but to go out and watch the dogs work, and then when they get birdie, then they go on point, and so then when they go on point, we'll walk. It's been a training process, but you don't know what they're on point. Usually, sometimes they'll false point depending if they smell like, if there's the poop or whatever from the bird. But it's so exciting, and you can't run up there. You got to be really methodical in the way that you flush the birds. And
right.
So then you flush the bird, and the bird's shot, and the dog retrieves it and brings it back, and the dog gets the bird in the mouth, and ultimately you can feed yourself or feed the whole thing as a team. I mean, think about it in terms of if that's how your survival, and you and this dog are a team, getting food together. It's so cool. So, and I don't know. It's blown my mind in a way. It's opened up a new thing for me that I didn't even know that I would love. So
Well, I remember just being so proud of my dog,
Yeah.
you know, and that's what it was. Is like, wow, I am amazed at you, you know, and your ability to do this, and I don't know, it just comes like there's a bonding that happens when you're out there in the elements together and working with like natural law and natural the world around us, the scents on the air, the scent in the air, looking at the dew, looking at the landscape, looking at the wind, temperature. There's so many things that you take into consideration, and it's just so
Yeah.
cool. We
That's
have
a primitive, intense primitive connection.
yeah, it speaks to a primal drive that's still inherent within even us that we forget because we have so many stimulated versions of our world that we don't need to be out there hunting and gathering. But when you get back to that raw element, it is empowering. And we have a few people here that have commented, and they're all fans of yours. We have David. I don't know how to say David's last name. I'm just going to put it up on the screen here.
Oh, okay.
So, Kelly rocks is what he's saying.
Oh, hi, Dave. Yeah, that's a friend of mine from elementary school.
Oh, fantastic. Yeah, and then we have another one from Rye, Mason.
Oh,
And
yeah.
then we have one from Max, who is one of
Hey,
your
Max.
trainers. And,
Yep.
and I sent Max a link to the back end of the show, so if he pops up here, we can say hi to him.
Oh, good. Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
but yeah, I got a lot of fans. And then what do you think about working with these dogs and what it does for them? I mean, do you ever take your pack therapy element and bring it out to your hunting ground, or is that something that's completely separate?
What do you mean exactly by that?
Do you take these dogs that have a history and take them out into the when you're hunting with these dogs and letting them see kind of a different form of what's possible with the other dogs, or is it something that's mostly in your house and in a more controlled environment?
Well, so one of the things I do, I don't mix the hunting stuff is so it's so different. I mean, I only want my hunting dogs out. It gets chaotic if you've got more than a couple dogs out running for birds, and that's its own entity. But with that said, when I do the pack therapy, I have access just immediately right where I'm at to hike in about 2,000 acres. And so once the dogs, are a reliable off leash, which is pretty quickly, I get that reliability. One thing we do every day is, and even with my own dogs, too, is we go hike out on this prairie. I'm like the little house in the prairie. We go hike out here almost every day. And it's just the time 100% for the dogs to go be dogs. They can smell whatever they want. They can eat, dead things. I don't care. I don't talk to them. I don't call them. I don't care what they do. And so we do that every day, and that's like our meditation. So when I have training dogs here, I try to incorporate them into that process every day, into the adventure. So, and then at our facility, in addition to that, just in general, we take the dogs off leash hiking every day that are enrolled in that program. We lease private land out here so that we can safely hike them without running into people or other dogs.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Well, I mean, it's a totally different need of rural versus urban, right?
I cannot train in the city. Ooh, no, yeah.
Why is that? Energy management thing, kind of a different tale of that.
Yeah. I mean, a few reasons. Once you live out here and your dogs have access to this freedom and being off leash in the mountains, and they have all this space, and then I see these little city dogs who are sitting in a backyard or in a crate for 12 hours a day, and then they walk around a little tiny area, and it kills me. It's just, and then the people too, like it's a very different type of client that we have out here versus the clients I had in Seattle.
Right.
Out here, remote training callers save lives. I say it every day. Once a week, someone calls me and they're like, a remote training caller saved my dog's life. It chased a moose and I called it off. It could have been killed, or a bear or something.
Right.
So,
Remote trainer, or is a e-collar, electric collar. You know, a lot of people will call them like shock collars or whatnot, but I agree wholeheartedly. This is a tool that, especially in wide open areas where we trust our dogs, we have to trust our dogs to be a little bit more independent.
Yeah.
Can definitely be a lifeline.
Yeah. And, you know, for my dogs, I mean, the relationship I have, I don't really need them on my dogs out here, but you know, my clients, it's hard to, if you're not a dog trainer, it's hard to have that same, I don't know, the same. Anyway, from the clients, it's a great tool for the lifestyle out here. So, and they're, you know, in the city, you get in the city and everybody's like, it's a very different mentality about dogs. It's like my fur babies and I can't put a shock collar on them and all that. And I'm like, it's not about any of that. It's like,
Oh, that drives me freaking nuts, man. I deal with it all the time, and it's something, you know, it's I just wish people, and that's my goal, is to get these people to not overlay human perceptions because it's a disservice to the animal, but instead get to know the animal on their level, and you're going to be blown away by what they're capable of, and what we kind of I don't know, like even Chad Mackin, who I love, he was saying about impulse control. Like these dogs are capable of way more impulse control than we give them credit for, and I think that we sell these dogs short on a number of fronts, right?
They're predators.
Right.
They're predators. Like they're amazing. We don't respect them enough for being predators, and it's just anyway. Go ahead though. But
well,
yeah.
I'm saying that's it. Is just to understand them and you know, and not use them as an emotional outlet, but to really get to know them. And that's why we do what we do, is to help people understand the dog on a different level. And that's it, is as we journey down and have experiences ourselves with these dogs, we want to share them. But it's hard to get over that hurdle, that emotional hurdle of viewing this animal as something that it's not.
Yeah. I'll ask you a question that comes up for me every day is when a client is talking about their dog being, you know, aggressive or leash aggressive or whatever, and they'll say the phrase that the dog is, you know, the dog's just trying to protect me, or is the dog protecting me? Or you hear that a lot, that phrase. And what do you think of when you hear that, when someone says that to you? And I'm sure
Like,
you hear it all the time too.
You need protection. I mean, I don't know. It's like, it's an excuse that is false. And I have to tell them that. It's like, what are they protecting you from? Let's take a 30,000 foot view of what's going on here. And they're like, oh, they're protecting me from the car. You know, or something. I don't know. It's just silly. So, what do you say? What do you say?
So here's the thing. I always come back and I say to the client, well, what do dogs protect? Let's think about this. They protect their newborn babies. So I'm like, are you a baby puppy? Nope. Are you acting like one? I don't know. Or I say they protect their food or a resource, right?
Right.
I mean, think about what dogs would actually. Go ahead.
A possession.
A possession.
Right.
So, or they're protecting themselves because we're not fulfilling that role for them. We put dogs on leashes so they can't go anywhere. We take them out in public. We force them to be pet by strangers. We force them to be dogs on leash. Why would they trust us? Of course, so when people are going out and they're like, well, the dog's, you know, trying to protect me. I'm like, it's probably trying to, you know, it's one of these things is protecting itself or potentially you as a resource. But I want people to start thinking about that because, that's that little phrase right there. Just I think about it all the time.
Well, and that's where, like, when I was in Vice Studios, I was there doing the Bronson show, the Action Bronson show a few weeks ago, and Bronson has a very fearful dog, an English setter that was just kind of needed some time, and I had to tell everybody in that studio, I'm like, don't even pay attention to this dog. I mean, just kind of ignore this dog. I'm being an agent for this dog, and I tell people I'm kind of like an attorney for the animal.
Yeah, exactly.
You know,
exactly.
I represent this animal. You
Yeah.
could tell me anything you need, but I'm looking at this animal and this benefit, the benefit and the well-being of this animal, and I'm going to make sure that that happens. That's why I'm here. And I had to tell the people, look, because that's what they would do. They would come up and be like, "Oh my God, it's a dog," and I'd be like, "Just don't even pay attention to that dog." I was like, "There's another dog over there that's perfectly fine," and they're like, "But I want to pet this dog. I love this dog," and I'm like, "Well, it's not about you right now. It's
Yeah,
about
it's not about you.
Gigi." And I
Yeah.
said, "I want you to do me a favor. I want you to pay attention to Gigi's body language versus Lily's, who was the other dog that was confident." And they're like, "Oh my God, Gigi's scared." I'm like, "Yeah, Gigi needs some time to put all this together. And if you come up and you start touching it, you're going to make it worse."
Yeah. Yep.
And they kind of get it. But even then, they're just like, "Oh, it's so hard for them." And
Yeah.
I don't get it. I mean, it's emotional, and but it's like, where do we, where do we need this emotional fix as a society, and why? Why is it so over the top? I mean, I get that we love these animals, but when do we love them too much and not take into consideration the structure and the importance of their wants and desires, right? And know that what they want and desire is just as important to them as what we want and desire is as important to us, right?
I definitely think there's a false assumption amongst the majority public that dogs enjoy us going up and touching them. That it's so. So I think there's two parts. I mean, I think obviously it feels good for us. It's, we have therapy dogs for a reason, but
Right.
I think literally people are like, that dog looks like it's bored or sad over there. I'm going to go, immediately go over and love on it, and the dog was just fine.
Or,
But,
or when people they know that I'm a dog trainer, they know Bow Wow Bill, and they want me to meet their dog, and I'm just like, cool, good looking dog.
and they're offended if you don't pet it.
Exactly.
Yeah, I
And
know.
I'm like, I don't need to pet that dog. That dog, look, we've acknowledged each other, and I can admire him from here. And
So,
so,
yeah, on that note, another thing that's really interesting is I really advise my clients, especially with kids, do not go up to strange dogs and put your hand out for them to smell ever. Like, how many people do you see that, their kids or adults have been bit by the hand reach out to smell, especially when they pull it away?
yeah,
But the dog can smell everything it needs to know about you across the room. It does not need you up in its face with your hand on its nose. That's bizarre. Like, just
yeah,
so every time I
absolutely.
meet a kid, I'm like, don't do that.
Yep. Well, and here, let's got some comments here
Yeah.
from Chrissy. Hi, I'm new to you both. Look forward to learning new things in our dog training industry. Fantastic. Wonderful to see you. Kelly, yes, it's so much different in Chicago. Too many closed mind people, and baby the dogs is ridiculous, like the fur babies, I think, when we were talking about.
Yeah.
And then I think because people these days live in a stressful state of constant movement. Here, I'll put this up here.
Okay.
I think people these days live in a stressful state of constant movement, and they feel the need to over love their dogs for their own
Security.
security issues. Yeah, I
Yeah.
agree.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, for
Well,
sure.
well, and I think that just that the love is that all that this dog needs, and they don't see the importance of routine, structure, and not just that, but the role of the dog and what motivates this animal. And sometimes what motivates that animal is going to be running and digging and just like Kelly said, if eating dead stuff, or figuring stuff out when you're out and about. I mean, there's different things that these dogs. Every single dog is an individual, and we have to take uh, the account that individuals want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the things I talk a lot about with my clients is introvert versus extrovert dogs.
Wow. Okay.
So, and that's just a really stereotype, especially on the introvert side. But, I'm going to plug my phone in a second here. I'm afraid it's going to die. But the introvert dogs typically have prick ears, and extrovert dogs have a dropped ear. And so when we're doing puppy class, one of the first things we do is we start by looking at our dog, going, who is our dog? So if your puppy's going to be an introvert, how are we going to support them as we're raising them? If they're an extrovert, how do you support them? So like in daycare, for example, it's ideal for labs and goldens and floppy ear dogs because they don't have as much concern about boundaries. they're just goofy and they're having a great time. But then you'll see the German Shepherds and the heelers over in the corner.
Yeah.
I always say that they're in the corner judging. They're in the corner like judging this, like I don't like any of it. It's not right. So, and then I gave a presentation the other day at our local Intermountain Therapy animal group, and I had them raise their hand if they had a prick-eared therapy dog, and no one raised their hand. I happened to, but nobody else had one in that room, and but from an evolutionary standpoint, the whole conversation about as we have made dogs friendlier, it's also caused their ears to drop, and so.
Well, that's just like the foxes in Russia, right?
Exactly, the Russian foxes. And then, but the exception to that, you see exceptions. Like I feel like the livestock guardian dogs are an exception. Anatolians and stuff. But they're a primitive breed with a dropped ear. But I think about that a lot and bring that awareness to the client. So, and now, as I'm talking, I'm going to plug my phone in here, so I'm going to take you with me.
Okay. Yeah, and if I lose you, then just come back on and we'll figure it out. But
I think I'm good.
Yeah, it's very interesting, and that's the other thing too. Is as professionals, we have a unique insight, and it's our duty to share some of these observations with our clients. I love it when I get rare exotic breeds. I love it to study up on them and a dog that I've never had before, right? And that's it. And you have 11 dogs yourself. What breeds do you have personally?
Currently, so my favorite, I'll start off by just being the oddball dog trainer and tell you what my favorite breeds are. I probably will have these for the rest of my life. One is what I mentioned, my Dutch Drottars, which are like hunting Malinois basically. And then I absolutely love Pomeranians. So I've got 2 Poms and a 3rd Pom on the way. And but beyond those,
shed a lot. Do they shed a lot? Poms do?
No, but their coat upkeep is pretty intense. So
matting and stuff.
Yeah. So but I've got the 2 blue heelers that you've met. I have a DDR German Shepherd. Oh, what else do I have? We have 2 English setters. I've got a little cow dog that's really it came from euthanasia at the shelter.
What about your Dachshund, your wire hair?
Pardon?
Wire hair Dachshund?
I placed her.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah. So one thing that I've done that I'll find a breed that I want to learn about that I don't have access to, and I'll either find one that I can foster or I'll get a puppy and train it, and then so I'll buy one as a puppy and either train it and then place it as a trained dog, or I'll keep it for the pack depending on if it's a good fit. So I've had a really interesting collection of rescue dogs / adopted dog breed wide. So everything from Russian wolfhounds to my little wire hair dachshund. She was from Russia. What else? I mean, Yog Terrier. I don't know if you've been around a Yog Terrier, but they are crazy in a way that's too crazy for me.
Really? Yeah, it's weird how people think that as dog trainers that we love all dogs. And I'm like, no, dude, I don't. There's some dogs that I'll work with any dog, and that's like, but there's some dogs like, and I tell people, look at my pack and look at who I have and who I choose. But yeah, just like, there's some dogs that really, really strike a chord with us, and there's some dogs that are. Carrie Hall is on, and she wants to know how you pronounce it. Drat, etc. Hey, Carrie, great to have you.
She wants to know how to pronounce the Drattar.
Yeah.
Everybody makes fun of me. We get in so many arguments how to pronounce it. So people, it's pronounced Drattar, like Drattar, but people in America say a Drattar or a Drattar. It doesn't matter, but it's Drattar. Dutch Drattar, yeah.
Yeah, Carrie, I would love to have you on one of these interviews as well. So we'll be in touch. Carrie's down.
Cool dogs. She's got great dogs.
Yeah, she's down in Colorado. She's awesome, and so.
Hi, Carrie. I love you.
Well, and that's it. It's like, so I think it's interesting that you're kind of going through these dogs and working with them to kind of get a feel for them and it's a totally different level when you have them 24/7. I
Yeah.
like that little Dotson. I like that little girl.
Yeah, I know she was a lot of people's favorite. But so do you know who Malcolm Gladwell is?
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I've read all his
he's
books.
got the 10,000 hour rule. Do you know what that is?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. Yeah.
Blink.
So
No, it was Outliers. Outliers was
yep,
a
yep, an outlier. So the rule, his idea is that it takes 10,000 hours of practice to master, something, violin, whatever. And so I feel like when you live in a pack of dogs where you have to navigate very carefully and give them feedback because, for one of them might die because you've got aggressive dogs in there, managing that, and they're 24 hours a day living in that space. It's 24 hours a day of you having that being like in a training atmosphere, you know what I'm saying, like in a
Yeah.
behavior. I mean, it becomes like a language to you. So again, I think it's been when people talk about their tools they go to, I'm like, my favorite tool and the only thing I'll ever need is my pack of dogs.
Yeah.
So
Well, I think that people get reliant on tools too much in this industry, and they don't realize that this tool, if you become reliant on a tool, then guess what? You have a crutch,
yeah.
and we need to get past that and get to a way that we can talk to this dog that doesn't require these tools. I mean, it's good to have those tools. Don't get me wrong, I love them,
No,
but
I agree. But when someone like if I get a new client and they immediately want to talk about tools and what they don't want to use or what they want to use, I'm like, we're not talking about that. It doesn't matter. I don't care. It doesn't interest me.
We're not there
talking
yet.
about tools.
Yeah.
It doesn't. That's not even in this conversation.
Right.
So,
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, until we get there, until I meet your dog, until I see your situation, until I, really, really see it for what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And not only that, but I tell people, especially other dog trainers that are just new and starting out, right, is like we can, give advice, but until that advice is asked for, until it's sought, your diagnostics is sought, then that's, we're really kind of, it's none of our business what another person's dog is doing, right? And that's the other thing I've learned is like, look, some people are happy with this crazy dog, right?
Oh yeah.
So they come to me and ask, hey, how can I fix this? How can I make this better? It's hard sometimes because a lot of it could be a quick fix, but as far as just understanding the role of the dog and the person dynamic, like we were talking about earlier, about being the cop in the relationship versus the drinking buddy,
mm-hmm.
and how much more confidence that instills into a situation. And I mean, if you can visualize that immediately when you know that a situation is being taken care of, like you can really and they call it a sigh of relief,
mm-hmm.
right? And you're like, oh. And I can see that in the dogs too, when that happens is they can kind of be like, oh, cool, you got this. And I'm like, yeah, dude, don't worry about it. It's not really up to you. It's up to us, and don't need to freak out and lose your mind all the time here.
Exactly. And the other thing, so kind of on that note is, I'm into horses. I'm not by any means a great horse trainer, but I like to make some comparisons. But one of the things I like to talk about is lightness and softness. So, back to obedience, you get these dogs in, especially the best trained dogs I have come in are the reactive dogs that are a history of aggression. The owners have put so much obedience on these dogs to manage them. So when I get them in and I'm looking at the dog, they're so obedient. I call that light. So they're just going through the motion, sit down, stay here, look at me in the eyes, all these things. The dog's doing it. There's no softness or connection in that dog. And I'm like, I don't care about any of that obedience. That dog is not connected to you at all. They're not worried about you, not thinking about you. They're just going through motions on their own little planet over there. So that's, again, another thing with the obedience is, it has its place and value in terms of like having a common language to communicate with each other. But but I love when you're talking about the dog, the moment that the sigh of relief. I love when the dog is just, there's all the triggers are out there. The dog, could be worried about, but they're soft and they're looking at you and they feel safe versus fearing, looking at you and feeling fearful of that or whatever. Anyway, that's
right.
Yeah.
Well, Jeremy says that it's just compliance, and that's absolutely right. I call it the click whir. Once you say it, then it's like click whir. It goes right into the movement, right? It's like a robot. It's a click whir response. It's something that is, and we want that dog, that connection. We want that dog to be like, cool, man. And then, and not only that, but I want that dog to look at me and be like, dude, look at what I did.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I look back at them and I'm like, I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of you. Keep it up.
Yeah.
We're getting there. But and that connection is really remarkable. I mean, but a lot of times, I don't know. What do you start when you say that when you see that kind of relationship? Do you say, hey, is it not the dog's not respecting you? Is it?
No, the word respect is tricky because it's a human word. Like if you
respect means like to look again. If you look at the word reapply, it means again, and then spectare, like spectacles, right?
Yeah.
Is look to look through, and so to look again is basically all that respect means.
Yeah. So in the dictionary, what it says it means is to like admire or to look, is
right.
to And so again, it's one of those words that we use a lot in dog training that it has an energy behind it because it's like, what does it mean for the dog to respect you? And so it's one that it's tricky for me. I'm careful when I use it, but what I ask the client when I'm watching them with the dog is I said, does the dog care about you? Is it thinking about you at all? Is it care? It's the word I use is care about you. Do you have value to this dog right now?
Is it checking in? Is it, looking, care.
Yeah. So that's, and I ask them that right away. And then, and then they're very confused when when trying to figure out it's, one of the things that you see a lot, right? When they come in, the dogs, all over their body, climbing all over them, screaming, and so I'll ask them, I say, okay, without touching your dog or saying any words, can you get your dog off your body? And man, you just want to see people fall apart. Holy Moses. They're they start talking and you can't use your hands and you can't talk to this dog. How do you get it off your body, out of your space? Like you're getting assaulted by that dog right now.
Yeah. Being rude.
And
over you.
Yeah. So, and then I'll notice that, a few minutes later, they're standing there and the dog will walk up and they'll step backwards and yield to the dog, constantly yielding to the dog, walking over, don't want to disrupt the dog. It's laying quietly. I'm going to walk way around the dog, and I was like, why would that dog believe you out in the real world when there's an emergency? Why is that dog going to believe you when it is assaulting you right now? I mean, that's a joke of a word, but I mean, when it's climbing all over you and then every time it walks by you, get out of its way. It
doesn't respect your boundaries. It doesn't respect. It's just fulfilling its wants and needs, and it's not looking for that feedback of like, is this okay? Is this something that you enjoy as well, right?
Yeah, and I think again, I'm going to keep saying this again. The dog's not worried about what we enjoy. That's a human quality.
Right.
The dog is, it's self-serving. I mean, obviously, of course it is. It doesn't have an ego. So it's.
I guess what I mean to say is like, is this a participatory act? Is it one-sided, I should say, instead of?
Yeah. So the dog isn't, the reason dogs have evolved with us for 20, 30,000 years is partly because they become a master of social conflict resolution. Like so a dog that's clawing you and all over you and moving out of your way, when you're putting up with that or moving out of the dog's way, have become the master of social. You're the one that's socially. I'm echoing. Weird.
You're good.
Am I echoing?
It goes away. Sometimes it happens.
Okay. But when you're the one moving out of the dog's way and then falling backwards when they're all over
you're the one that's yielding to them socially,
you know, and that's confusing for the
confusing
dog.
for the dog.
You know,
Well,
so
giving them this false sense of entitlement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But then you're putting that dog in a position when you go out in public to also be the one that's got to go out and worry about everything. You know, they have control of the house. I'm a big person. I love talking about controlling space, cleaning space. So I'm echoing on my side. I'm not
sure why.
I'm sorry. It's something that happens. But do you crate your dogs?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay, yeah. Controlling space is huge, and
Yep.
you know, a lot of times that's the first thing that I ask people when they call me is, do you crate your dog? And a lot of times they're like, we used to.
Every time.
Yeah, we used to when he was a puppy. I'm like, well, that's the first thing we're gonna do is dust off that crate. You know, you know, we're gonna start to get that back into into the routine here. And that's it. A lot of this is. Am I? Hold on. It says that am I echoing you guys? Let me know in the comments here. Nathan said, I think Bill's mic is picking up Kelly's audio and repeating it. So I don't know what's going on, but we're almost done here anyway. We've been on for a while. I want people, know thy dog. So in Montana, if you're in Montana or not, it's in Know Thy Dog. Well, you can get there by knowthy.dog too. Know that.
That's right. Thing.
Yeah, I made that for you. So you can get there like that, Know Thy Dog. But if you really want to go, you go to Know Thy Dog Training. That will direct you there. Know Thy Dog Training, and check to make sure that my spelling's okay, Kelly.
Okay.
So here's Know Thy Dog Training, and this is how you would get a hold of Kelly, right?
Yeah.
How else would if people would like to get a hold of you? How would they do that?
We also have Know Thy Dog page, so it's just Know Thy Dog with Facebook. Here comes the falcons in the room here.
No, wait, yeah, show the falcon.
Here, bring your bird over.
We're live right now.
Comes
On the Bow Wow Field page. Did you go? So were you out hunting?
Yeah.
I'd have a hard time.
Very cool, man. So what kind of bird is that?
So this is his name's Tom. He's a half falcon, half true falcon. 18 years
Oh, they have hybrids, huh? Half, huh?
Yep.
Wow.
18 years old, and we're still trying to get it done.
He's 18 years old. The bird is.
Yeah.
Wow, man. What's the lifespan?
He's about there.
Okay. Are you going to get another chick and start the training process over again, or?
Hard. That's still working on this guy. He's going to keep flying. We'll see.
Oh, that's wild.
How this season ends up and stuff.
Cool.
We'll see.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much for showing us. And
yeah.
Oh wow! Look at that! Look at that! I don't think I've ever seen that with a bird of prey being handled like that. So with the mouth there. I lived in. I'm from Boise, Idaho. We have the birds of prey out there, and
we were just there like 2 weeks ago.
Oh yeah, that's great. That's where I handled peregrine falcon, and they're just so cool, man.
Yeah.
I mean, just so cool. That's what when they say that birds came from lizards, like I can see that, how they move really quick like that, and I mean they're no nonsense too. When you watch these birds, fighting another bird that's getting in their nest or something, I mean they're no joke at all. So cool. Yeah, that was a bird just hanging out now.
Yeah. This guy had my dogs, and there was some pigeons 800 or 900 feet. I killed a pigeon.
Say that again. You were breaking up a little bit.
I said you know, free will is tough. I had partridge. My dogs were pointing some partridge tonight. He was up 8 or 9 hundred feet and saw some pigeons at a house about half a mile away, and he raked up the house.
No way.
So even with like underneath me and team setups with the dogs like that.
Wow.
He still just goes off.
Does his own thing, man.
This is the little falcon. Loves the falcon.
No way.
Yep.
So cool, man. Well, I'm glad that you came in at the end here. Well, so yeah, check out the Know Thy Dog Training Obedience group obedience group.
Wow, really?
Really?
Have we even talked tonight?
I have it written down right here.
You're
So
funny.
the Know Thy Dog Training group on Facebook. And thank you so much for your time, Kelly. As always, it's a pleasure speaking with you.
You too.
You too.
Let me know when you're back out here. Let's do dinner or something, okay?
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
All right, bye, everybody.
Bye.